Welcome back, guys. Today we are going to do a quick review on elaboration strategies. We have already discussed this before break, but today we'll just do a quick review in preparation for our activity for today. All right, what do we remember from elaboration strategies? We know that races or racer is the traditional way of writing a paragraph response. There are also different personal styles in writing responses. The goal is to answer the prompt. So, if you are a beginner writer or an intermediate writer, we want you to follow races. So that way you cover or include all of the components in your paragraph response. However, if you are an intermediate to a master or an intermediate, like a high intermediate to an expert writer, you can use your personal writing style in paragraph responses or essays as long as you cover all of the components in races or racer. So, first, we restate the question from the prompt and we answer the question. Both of these can be in one sentence, or you could have them in two different sentences. Once you've restated and answered the question, you are going to cite textual evidence. And when we say cite textual evidence, you are going to copy from the article a quote that you can use in your paragraph response that is related to your answer. So you can't just copy random quotes. It has to support your answer to the prompt. And when we say cite textual evidence, you have to tell the audience where you got your textual evidence from. And we do that by giving the title of the document source, the author's last name, page numbers, and line numbers. So, however you cite your textual evidence, you have to, or wherever you cite your textual evidence, you have to tell your audience where you gathered the information from. So, once you have cited textual evidence, you need to remember to explain your textual evidence and how your textual evidence supports your answer. So they are all related. After explaining, you will end with a red bow or sum it up. So it is one sentence that concludes your paragraph or transitions it to the next paragraph response. So in races, we have explain, and we explain by using elaboration strategies. So the E in races or racer is explain using elaboration strategies. What are elaboration strategies? These are ways for a writer to expand his or her topic in a paragraph. And you do this all the time when you talk to people. Think of a time when you described an unfamiliar food or drink to your sibling, or a time when you explained an exciting new game to your parents and how it is almost impossible to pause an online game. Or think of a time when you raved about this new amazing place you went to. Or think of a time when you talked about an exhilarating movie you just watched. So when you explain a new character, a device, a conflict, a resolution, the different ways of explaining those ideas are called elaboration strategies. We all explain our ideas in more than one way, and we use elaboration strategies. So there are many different types of elaboration strategies. Out of all of these elaboration strategies, we will always, always, always use textual evidence and example, explain and clarify. They always go together. Whether you are intermediate, novice, expert, In your paragraph responses, you will always include textual evidence, explain, and clarify. Oops, I forgot. Facts, statistics, and figures. Okay, so for our sentence stems, as the term implies, we use the sentence stem to start your sentence. So let's say you are running out of ideas on how to explain yourself. You will use the sentence stems to start your sentence. For explain and clarify, we have by this I mean, we will only use the sentence stem if we are using first person point of view. So you are explaining yourself, and if it is informal. Here are sentence stems for textual evidence or example. Sentence stems for compare and contrast. Notice how this has dots before it and after it. It's not really a sentence stem because you put it in your sentence where you add something in the beginning and finish some or add something towards the end. Here are some sentence stems for cause and effect. In lieu of is the perfect replacement for because. For personal experience, here are some sentence stems. Please note that first and second point of view to be used only for informal tone of writing. So we're not using these if it's formal. Again, we use these sentence stems where you refer to yourself only if it's first and second and only for informal tone. Literal description, we use your five senses. Figurative language, we use simile, metaphor, personification, oxymoron, idiomatic expressions to explain yourselves. Facts, statistics, and figures. Use information from reliable sources and remember to cite your source, whether it's the title of the document, the author's last name, page number, line number, source number. You have to tell your audience what it is. And when we cite, we use parenthetical citation. So you use parentheses and include those information in your parentheses. So here is an example of an elaboration strategy. We've done the BBC. My prompt is, why am I doing this activity? It's a tradition I started with my students during Halloween season and a tradition I plan to keep. The BBC increases the morale of the classroom because the activity is a shared experience, hence all share in the fun and disgust. And the BBC is just plain fun. So let's take this for example. Let me read it again. I know we've done this before. So as the famous adage goes, looks can be deceiving. That's my hook. Behold the unassuming jelly bean, sugar-coated, marbled with an array of colors, surely to tempt any, soft and chewy, fruity with a hint of heaven. Who has the will strong enough to deny his impulse to snatch this delightful jelly bean? I do, for this jelly bean is not an ordinary jelly bean. Behind its beauty is a taste so foul it will make your taste buds complain and your belly retch. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2019 5th Annual Bean Boozled Challenge, hosted by me, Mrs. Rogers. This challenge is set forth for no reason other than fun. By this I mean students get to experience the thrill of chance. In this bottle lies 10 different types of jelly beans. Each jelly bean has a true flavor or a wild, weird flavor. Let us take, for example, the jelly bean I have in my hand. This jelly bean can be tutti frutti or stinky socks. Just by looking at it, you will never know. The fun comes in when you pop this beauty in your mouth to find out if you get the bean or if you get boozled. Like a gambler, you have 50-50 chance to get either. Many students have backed out from this challenge. As Effie from the Hunger Games say, let the games begin and may the odds be ever in your favor. And there's my citation right there. Okay, so if I were to break down my announcement, you will notice that I included all of the elaboration strategies. In addition, here is my restate and answer. So my question is, why do I host the BBC? I started my response with a hook. As the famous adage or saying goes, looks can be deceiving. So I then continued to include a literal description, a personal experience, a figurative description, and like I mentioned, when you have your personal style of writing, you could put your components in different orders as long as you hit every single one of them. So notice how for my restate and answer, I have it in the middle of my paragraph response. I also have explain and clarify, facts, statistics, and figures. It's more like facts because in the bottle lies 10 different types of jelly beans. I have explain and clarify because I explain my statistics and figures. I have cause and effect, another's experience, compare and contrast, and notice how in my textual evidence, if we were using the book movie as a source or document article, this is what I'm using. And I summed it up. So at this point, if you would like to pause your video to look at this and to examine it, go ahead. Otherwise, we have two different examples after this. Okay, moving on. Here is an example of how you would do a elaboration strategy in a paragraph response. So we are looking for three or more elaboration strategies. Once again, we always have to use textual evidence as one and explain as another. So you have to add one more elaboration strategy. So when you do your paragraph responses, remember racer or races. You have to restate and answer, cite textual evidence, explain your textual evidence, and end with a red bow or a sum it up. So here's an example. Describe or characterize Mrs. Stevenson in the drama Sorry, Wrong Number. Restate, Mrs. Stevenson can be characterized. Answer, using her speech. And then I'm citing textual evidence. Remember that you start your textual evidence with an introduction first. After your introduction, you copy your text from your article, which is this. And once you copy your text from your article, you have to end with a parenthetical citation. Parentheses, author's last name, title of the document, source number, and if you are able to add page numbers or line numbers, you do. And then after you cite, you explain your citation and how it supports your answer, and you will end with a red bow or sum it up. So here, notice that as another explain and clarify, I use cause and effect as my third elaboration strategy. So let's read our paragraph response. It says, describe and characterize Mrs. Stevenson in the drama Sorry, Wrong Number. Mrs. Stevenson can be characterized using her speech. In the story, after she talked to the chief operator to have the call traced, she said, "Oh, for heaven's sake, you mean to tell me I can't report a murder without getting tied up in all this red tape? It's perfectly idiotic." Fletcher, page 115. Her dialogue characterizes her as a person who easily gets frustrated. Although the chief operator explains why the call can't be traced, Mrs. Stevenson refuses to understand and becomes sarcastic at the end of the call. Her choice of words shows her frustration. So at this point, if you want to pause this video and review races in this paragraph response, this is what we want yours to look like. Obviously, you could add more elaboration strategies and more examples. Here is a different format of our paragraph response. Once again, same paragraph, but only this time, instead of putting our restate and answer in the beginning of our response, I put it in the middle of the paragraph, and notice how it creates the same effect. In the story, after Mrs. Stevenson talked to the chief operator to have the call traced, she said, "Oh, for heaven's sake, you mean to tell me I can't report a murder without getting tied up in all this red tape? It's perfectly idiotic." Fletcher 115. Mrs. Stevenson can be characterized using her speech. Her dialogue characterizes her as a person who easily gets frustrated. Although the chief operator explains why the call can't be traced, Mrs. Stevenson refuses to understand and becomes sarcastic at the end of the call. Her choice of words shows her frustration. So notice we followed all of our racer or races components. They are just in different order. All right. So at this time, you guys are going to practice using your knowledge of the story, describe or characterize Mrs. Stevenson in the drama Sorry Wrong Number by using her speech, thoughts, effect on others, actions, and looks. Remember to cite using the author's last name and page number or line numbers. Remember to also use races and our elaboration strategies handouts.